Alex, go ahead.
All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining today. My name is Alex, and for you just who don't know me, I'm a senior consultant at Redapt, working for advanced analytics. I have more than 4 years experience in traditional data engineering, business intelligence, and data warehousing. And since I got a master degree in data science, I'm also familiar with the machine learning and how to build like data science projects and machine learning pipelines. And recently, I'm also got certifications on Azure and GCP for their like professional data engineer and the cloud architect, and also as well as the data scientist and AI scientist. And you are welcome to connect with me on LinkedIn, and here's the link. So today, I'm going to share with you some 2 cents about how to prepare for a coding interview. And again, specifically, I'm going to talk about what you can expect in a coding interview and tips to prepare for the coding interview. And eventually, I'm gonna give you guys a walkthrough of a classical coding interview question, which is the famous lead code question number 1 to sum. Here, this is just a book called Cracking the Coding Interview. This is one of the most popular book that people will use when they prepare for the coding interview. And you can find more details about this book through this link here. So let's start it with what you can expect within a coding interview. Usually, like those big tech companies, they will hold a coding interview within like a 45-minute session. And basically it's just a problem-oriented session, and the interviewer will try to assess the candidate on like different kind of aspects, things like analytical skills, coding skills, and also as well as the fundamentals of your CS knowledge. And also one more important thing is the communication skills. So they want to know things like, did you end up solving the problem, and how optimal was your solution, and how long did it take you to arrive at the solution? And also they will check your coding style, and also whether or not you are able to translate your basic CS knowledge and the algorithm to like reasonable codes. And also, since it's gonna be they will also evaluate your communication skills. They will also try to evaluate whether you are a good fit with their company culture. So usually, a coding interview will start with something called phone interviews. So during phone interviews, it's usually the candidate and the interviewer will use and collaborate through platforms like CodePadder and HackerRank. So these are like web-based code editors, and you just the interviewer will give you the question, and you start to code on those web-based code editors. And a couple of things to notice is that those code editors doesn't like the IDs you use every day during your work. They don't have like syntax checking or code autofilling. So just a reminder, when you practice or prepare for your coding interview, you try to, eventually you want to grab some like a text editor just to, solve the problem using those plain text editor. And I think once you pass the first in the phone interviews, you will go into the next phase, which is on-site interviews. So right now, I know some companies are holding on-site interviews through like Zoom meetings or any like meeting software, and usually conduct as a virtual on-site interviews. But usually the on-site interviews will consist of like 3 to 5 rounds technical interviews. We are going to face problems similar to the questions you had with during your phone interviews, but it's actually depending on the level you are interviewed with. You could face like more harder questions, or you will be very more complex dimensions. And also one thing to notice is that during on-site interviews, again, you are going to probably code on a whiteboard. And also I know some companies like Amazon, they will provide candidates an online assessment even before the phone interviews. So in this case, for example, the Amazon, they will provide questions like, for example, they will give you a piece of code and you don't need to code, but you need to figure out if there's some bugs or issues with the code they give to you, and you need to point out and give out the reason why they're having issues. And also sometimes the online assessment will also test you on some larger questions other than, you know, the traditional coding interviews. Sorry, next page. So it's recommended to research on what questions each company will ask you. So basically, different companies have a different preference on selecting coding interviews. So it's very important to figure out in advance, like what kind of questions you may be facing for the company you're interviewing with. Generally, you can find, you know, this information in several places. You can, you know, depending on the level of the job you are going to interview with. For example, if you are going to interview like a entry-level job, usually you just need to prepare for the traditional questions or like easy, medium level questions on the lead code. But sometimes if you are going to interview, take an interview for like a senior level or higher level position, you probably need to prepare for things more than like traditional algorithm questions, or, you know, things like system designs or objective-oriented design. This stuff will be also tested besides the coding questions. And also on lead code, they also has a very nice feature that they have collections of top interview questions for each big tech company. So on lead code, you can find a specific group of questions for Amazon or Apple or Google, those fun company. Also, another good way to know what questions you will be asked is just to visit some online forums, blogs, and places that, you know, some former or current employees of the company you're interviewing with. They will share some ideas and suggestions about their interview process. And also, it's also a good practice to know to just ask the recruiter directly for the topics that may appear in your incoming interview. And here I found a very good website just to help you eliminate the guesswork from the coding interviews. So basically this website, the codinginterview.com, it will provide very useful suggestions depending on the company you are going to interview with. And I can show you an example. So can you see my screen? So this is this website, and you can see they have built some guides for each big company, you name it. And if you are going to, for example, interview with Amazon, you just click into there, and they will provide a lot of useful suggestions for like the coding interview with Amazon. Let's resume to my slide. So how to prepare for the coding interview. Here I'm gonna list several tips that I highly recommend you to think about. So the first tip is don't jump into the questions right away. I know like some people like who have zero background in coding and computer science, they are, they try to get a job as a software engineer, and also they heard that there's a high chance to encounter an actual interview coding questions on LeetCode. So what they do is they just go to the leetcode.com directly and start working on the questions on the LeetCode. And if they can't figure out the logic behind the questions, they just memorize the solutions. So please do not take any shortcut. The Rome wasn't built in a day. So there's always more aspects that you will be evaluated, not just the solution to the questions you had during your interviews. Things like data structures, algorithms, and also foundations in coding. This stuff you need to be mastering before you dive into the coding interview questions. And usually, by studying this knowledge, you will better understand the solution of the interview questions. And also sometimes you can even, derive some or get some directions if you can't think of the solutions, but you know that direction that you are trying to optimize. And also, you will also encounter questions like the interviewer will ask you the complexity of your solution. So you better prepare for this one, the big O notation. You need to know what is time complexity and the space complexity of your solutions. So again, just do not take any shortcut when you prepare for those coding questions, starting with the very basics, and it's very beneficial to your entire coding interview journey. Also, my second tip, as I mentioned before, better to pick the programming language most comfortable with you. So during coding interview, you will be very anxious and stressed. So usually you should pick a language that you are very familiar with the syntax, so that you won't waste time to think about the syntax or like things like coding style. You can just focus on the logic of the solution. Again, since as I mentioned before, you are not going to code on those editors with IntelliSense. It's important to be very familiar with the syntax of the programming language you pick. And also the final tip I will give to you is and it's the most important tip, is just practice, practice, and practice. So coding interview, the preparation for coding interview is like an iterative journey. It's a long-term vision, and you better to start with the basic knowledge, and then you can start with trying the LeetCode questions, trying those easy level LeetCode questions, just to brush up your newfound knowledge about data structures and the algorithms. And also, it's always a good idea to time yourself, think out loud, and consider the complexity when you solve the questions on LeetCode. Those are the all necessary aspects that you will probably face in your coding interview. And with those aspects keep in mind, you're just getting more practice, and you can go to like medium or hard level on LeetCode. And also, and emphasize on LeetCode, actually one benefit of practicing on LeetCode is that sometimes, you will either see or complete your actual interviews. You will find some same questions during your interview as when you prepare for your coding with your LeetCode. So again, just never give up is the key. Whenever comes to our mind, just try to not to give up a problem when you can solve it. You probably need to recollect all the experience from failures, and there's always a scope of learning each error or bug you face. Just keep learning and give one more tries to those questions, and you will learn a lot from those errors or bugs or failures. So let me give you the introduction and walkthrough of the famous LeetCode questions, just to give you a taste of what coding interview and questions look like. So here, this is the famous LeetCode question number 1 to sum. So here, this is the description of this problem. So you are given an array of integer numbers and also an integer target. What you are trying to do is you want to write a code that can return the indices of the two numbers such that they add up to the target. For example, here I have an array of 4 numbers, 2, 7, 11, 15. And you are also given a target number, which is 9. So the output you want to get is 0, 1, because for the 0 index of this array, it's going to be 2. And for the index 1, it's going to be 7. So 2 plus 7 equals 9. So this is a valid output of these questions. And also you may assume that each input would have exactly one solution, and you may not use the same element twice for these questions. And also you can return the answer in any order. So here, you will always have some assumptions about coding questions you will have during your interview. This another best practice is just to, before you dive into the questions, you want to ask and communicate with your interviewer. What are some assumptions you may have for these specific questions? What will be some corner cases, and then you will move on to the solutions. So the most intuitive way to solve these questions is just kind of some brute force, where you will search all the possible, pair of numbers. So in this case, if we starting to iterate this array, for 2, we are going to check whether 7 add to 2 equals 9, and then we will check whether 11 add to 2 equals 9, and then finally 15 add to 2 whether it equals to 9. So this is the most intuitive way to solve this problem. Basically, it's just you solve it with double for loops, and for each, and loop each through element and find if there's another value it equals to the target value minus the value you are looking at. So in this case, the time complexity is not good. This is not a very efficient way to solve this problem. It's the worst case is O(n) squared, where you have to, for a given number, you have to search the entire array for the solution. So in this case, the code for this brute force just simply a nested for loop for each given number in our array. We just keep looking at the rest of the numbers in this array, and we will check whether they sum up to the target number, if they sum up to the target number, we will just return their indices. So there's a better way to solve this problem. So if you one thing to notice that for each number, for example, the 2 I mentioned previously, the value we are looking for actually is just, for 2, it's just the 9 minus 2, which is the 7. So for each number, we are actually just want to search for the complement of the number we are looking at. So in this case, 7 will be the number we are looking for. That means we don't have to check every number in the array. We just want to know whether 7 exists in this array. And if it exists, then we just return the indices of 2 and 7. And if it does not, we will just keep continuous search. So that means there is a better way, to solve this problem by just creating some extra data structure that can help us track the indices of each number in this array. So in this case, we are going to create a hash map, or in Python, we call it dictionary to speed up our search. So a better way, a more clever way to implement is you will first create a hash map or dictionary just to record all the indices of each number in the input array. And then we will, in the second iteration, we will check if each element's complement exists in this hash map or hash table. If it does exist, we will just return current elements in this index and its complements index. So in this case, for the code we have here, we will start building this hash map using one for loop, just to record all the indices of each number in the input array. And then we will loop the input array again. We will try first compute the complement number of our of the number we are looking at, which is just the target minus the number we are looking at. And then we will just search whether or not the complement number exists in the hash map we just created. And also be aware of that, since the question asks us not to use the not to use the number twice. So you need to check on whether this is the same number as the number you are looking at. So if it's not, we can just return the indices of the current number and the complement number. So this is a way more efficient way to solve this problem. In this case, the time complexity will just be O of n, since we are just traverse the list of containing like n elements exactly. And since the hash table reduced the lookup time to O1, the overall, the complexity is just O of n. And regarding the space complexity, we only just need, an extra space for creating this hash map. So it's gonna be O of n. But most of the time, when an interviewer trying to, ask you how to optimize your solution, your algorithm, usually we are putting more focus on the time complexity. So if you can, reduce the time complexity of your solution, that's usually a good sign. And also, there is even a more clever way to solve this problem. So remember previously, we solved problem by two for loops. Basically, we iterated our input array twice. One iteration for creating the indices hash map, and another for loop to check the complement number, whether it exists in the hash map. But actually, a more clever way to do this is that we can combine these two processes into just one for loop. This is because, while we are iterating and inserting elements into our hash map, we actually do is we just need to look back into the numbers we have checked, and if the current elements complement already exists in the hash map, then we are good to return the solution, return the indices immediately, so that we do not need to check the rest of the numbers in our input array. So in this case, instead of iterating the input array twice, we just need to using one single for loop to iterate our input array, and we will still need to compute the complement number for the given number we are looking at. And if it exists in the the hash map we have created so far, then it's a valid solution. We just need to return the indices of the number we are looking at and the indices of the the complement number. And if it's not, we just continue search. We'll add this number to our hash map, and later on it might be a valid candidate for the future number we are looking at in this input array. Again, in this case, the time complexity of this solution is just gonna be big O of n, since we just traverse the input array once, and the space complexity of this solution is still O(m), since we still need this hash map to help us record the indices of each number in this array. So this is just a typical coding questions you will face during your coding interview. So just to summarize, you will start with reading the problem. You need to know what does the input output look like for this coding interview questions, and then you need to make sure to clarify with your interviewer what are some assumptions on the cases you need to think about, and then you can move on to think about the solutions for your coding interview questions. And you may stuck with the question initially, so idea is just trying to think of any solution like brute force that can help you at least have a one working solution for the specific questions. And then you can maybe communicate with your interviewer and ask them ask them for a hint like how to optimize your solutions. And usually if you have a discussion about things like time complexity and space complexity with your interviewer, you might get a hint or an idea like how to optimize your solutions. For example, in these questions, the way we optimize our original brute force solution is just trying to, since we are reducing the time complexity from O(n) squared to O(m), that means we are actually, instead of using nested for loop, we are just going to using one for loop. So in that case, you just need to think about how to solve this question using only single one for loop. And also, what I give to you is just the true sum, and you may face in your interview, there are some variants of these questions. You could see some questions like 3 sum, 4 sum, and also for 2 sum, you could be given an array that is already assorted. That means you probably will need to use some advanced algorithm to try to get the optimized and the most efficient way to solve the problem. So on LeetCode, there's a very good features that you can reach out to those related or similar questions of the question you're looking at. And I highly recommend you just study those questions so that you can, summarize and get an idea of those questions, like how are they, correlated in a nutshell. So just to summarize what I have talked about for better preparing for the coding interviews, just remember starting with the foundational knowledge, since coding skills and data structures and also algorithm. Do not take any shortcut. You please just, once you have a solid knowledge about the data structures, algorithm, you usually will speed up your preparation when you actually dive into the real coding interview questions on the code. And also pick the programming language most comfortable with you, so that you won't get stuck when you try to code during your interview. And also remember, preparing for coding interviews is an iterative journey. Do not give up and try to build a long-term motivation, and just keep practicing. Yeah, that's it for the seminar today. And do you have any questions?
No, I guess.
I know it's just quite like an overview of the coding interview, like how to prepare it. There's a lot of more topics to cover, for specific details and about the coding interviews, and probably a good idea to have more presentation about those topics in the future. Yeah.
Alex, do you have a page with the links? Or you included
yes.
Okay, so lead code and coding interview.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, the book which you showed, which is Gail Luckman McDowell's book, and it went through so many editions. It's absolutely famous book.
Yeah.
Last time I listened to her, she was at Facebook. Maybe she's still at Facebook. So she's amazing. The book is amazing. There are many YouTube videos. There's actually playlists where each video is showcasing some method, some specific interview question type. There are not many types of questions. Maybe there are maybe 30, 40 of them. And probably if you solve like 100 questions, you probably cover most of them. Yeah, and some things are absolutely basic, right? So you add a hash map, right, as an intermediate storage. Sometimes you need to add more than one. Sometimes you need to add hash and array together. Sometimes you use heap. Surprisingly, many people don't know some data structures like a heap or maybe priority queue and how they work. But again, if you go through her book, I think she covers everything. And I have some stuff on my GitHub. I'll add link when I post it on YouTube. Alex, I think it was very, very thoughtful and very, very
really informative.
Yeah, it was a very good presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Bye.
Thank you, Alex.
Yeah, thank you guys for joining.